The river was quiet when Daniel left his small wooden house at sunrise. The sky was pale and cool, and the early morning mist floated above the water like a thin white blanket. Daniel pushed his small wooden boat into the river and stepped inside. He carried only simple things: a rope, a fishing net, a bottle of water, a piece of bread, and a small knife. He planned to travel far along the river to find a place where fish were said to gather in great numbers. Daniel needed money to support his family, and he believed that this journey would help them. The river started narrow, with smooth water that barely moved. Daniel paddled slowly, enjoying the fresh air. The trees on both sides of the river stood tall, and the sunlight began to shine through their leaves. Birds flew above him, calling to each other, and Daniel felt calm. He loved the river and trusted it. For years it had been his path, his work, and sometimes his escape. As the hours passed, the river grew wider. The air became colder, and the wind began to push lightly against his back. Daniel noticed the sky changing. Soft white clouds were turning gray and heavy. He looked up and felt a small worry rise inside him, but he told himself that it was only a normal change in weather. The river had a rhythm, and he believed he understood it. He continued paddling deeper into the wide part of the river. The trees were denser here, their branches leaning forward as if they were watching him. The water grew darker and heavier. The sound of birds faded until the forest around him became strangely silent. Daniel felt the silence in his chest, a cold and unfamiliar feeling, but he kept moving forward. A sudden sound of thunder rolled across the sky. Daniel looked up quickly. The clouds had grown thick and dark. The wind strengthened, pushing harder against the side of his boat. The river began to ripple. Daniel held the paddle tightly. He tried to turn the boat toward the shore, but the current pushed him away from it. A raindrop hit his hand, then another, and soon the rain began to fall in heavy sheets that blurred the world around him. The river reacted instantly. Waves formed and slapped against the sides of the boat. Daniel felt the boat shake as if the river held it in angry hands. He tried to keep the boat straight, but the current grabbed it and spun it around. Rain hit his face so hard that he could barely keep his eyes open. He shouted for help, but his voice disappeared into the storm. A powerful wave crashed into the boat, lifting it slightly and dropping it hard. Daniel grabbed the rope he brought and tied it around his waist and the center bench of the boat so he wouldn't fall out. The boat moved like a toy in a giant hand. It dipped, rose, shook, and twisted until Daniel's arms hurt from holding on. The storm grew worse. Lightning cracked across the sky, bright and sharp. Thunder followed with a deep roar that echoed through the forest. Daniel's heart pounded. He felt the cold water inside the boat rising around his legs. He used his hands to throw it out, but more waves filled the boat faster than he could empty it. The sky darkened until day looked like night. Daniel tried to paddle, but the water pushed the boat wherever it wanted. All he could do was hold on and hope the boat would not capsize. Hours passed, or maybe only minutes, Daniel could no longer tell. The storm changed his sense of time. Each second felt long. Each wave felt like a threat. Each breath felt like a decision to stay alive. When the rain finally slowed, the river was still wild, but less violent. Daniel's arms were weak, his clothes soaked, and his body cold. His hands shook as he loosened the rope around his waist. He looked around. He saw no houses, no people, no familiar parts of the river. The storm had pushed him far away, but he had no idea how far. Night approached. The sky turned dark blue, then black. Daniel lay on the bottom of the boat, too tired to move. The river carried him slowly through the darkness. He could not see the trees or the shore anymore. He listened to the soft sound of water lapping against the wood of the boat. His breathing slowed, but he did not sleep. He was too cold, too afraid. He whispered to himself that he would survive. He had survived the storm. He would survive the night. At dawn, the sky turned golden pink. Daniel sat up slowly. His muscles ached. His throat was dry. His bread was soaked and useless. His water bottle was still half full, but he knew it would not last long. He looked around. The river was calmer now, wider than he had ever seen. On both sides, the forest looked heavier and taller. He had drifted into a deep, remote place. He tried to paddle back the way he came, but the current was too strong. It carried him forward, slow but steady. Daniel did not fight it. He saved his energy. He watched the trees and listened to the forest. He hoped he might hear a human voice or see smoke from a village, but there was nothing. As the sun rose higher, the heat pressed down on him. His throat burned. He drank small sips to save water. Hours passed. The river joined another river, larger and deeper. Daniel realized he had entered a place he had never explored. The air smelled different, older, wilder. In the afternoon he saw something ahead, a long stretch of broken branches floating on the water. They moved slowly like a living wall. Daniel tried to steer the boat around them, but the current pushed the boat straight toward them. When the boat hit the branches, it shook hard. Daniel grabbed the sides and kept himself steady. The branches scraped the bottom of the boat, but the boat did not break. After pushing through the floating debris, Daniel saw that the river ahead was narrow again, curving sharply to the right. The narrow path offered some hope. Maybe people lived along this part of the river. Maybe he would find a village. He followed the curve and paddled slowly. The sun began to lower in the sky again. Daniel's body grew weaker. He felt hunger and exhaustion. He knew he needed food soon. As he drifted, he scanned the riverbanks for fruit trees. He spotted a tree with low branches hanging over the river. Green fruits hung from the branches. Daniel guided the boat carefully toward the bank. When he reached it, he grabbed the branch and pulled the boat close. He picked the fruit and smelled it. It smelled sweet. He tasted a small bite. It tasted good. He ate slowly, saving some for later. The sun set again, and darkness returned. Daniel tied the boat to a tree root so it wouldn't drift away and lay down. He listened to frogs, insects, and the soft sound of the river. The night was warm, and he felt a little comfort for the first time since the storm. He closed his eyes but stayed ready to wake up if the river changed. In the early morning, a strange sound woke him. It was soft at first, like a distant drum. Then it grew louder. Daniel sat up and looked around. The water around the boat shook gently. The sound grew deeper, stronger, like water hitting rocks. Daniel felt a sudden fear. He untied the rope quickly and pushed the boat into the river. The sound grew louder with every second. Daniel paddled hard. The river moved faster, pulling him forward. Ahead, he saw mist rising from the water. His heart raced. The sound was no longer distant. It was close. Very close. He knew what it was. A waterfall. Daniel paddled with all his strength, trying to move the boat toward the side of the river. His muscles screamed in pain. The current grew stronger. The boat shook violently. He pushed against the current with everything he had. Slowly, the boat moved toward the right side of the river. The waterfall roared beside him. The water fell with enormous power into a deep pool below. The mist covered his face. He could feel the pull of the fall tugging the boat toward the edge. He pushed harder. Inch by inch, the boat responded. The current fought him, but he kept going. Finally, the boat reached a calm pocket of water behind a large rock. Daniel rested, breathing heavily, shaking with fear and exhaustion. He had escaped the waterfall, but he did not know how much strength he had left. He let the boat drift slowly into a quiet part of the river downstream from the waterfall. The river widened again. The forest opened slightly. Daniel saw a thin line of smoke rising above the trees. His heart lifted. He followed the smoke. After a long and slow journey, he saw a small village near the riverbank. Children ran along the edge of the water. When they saw Daniel, they shouted for the adults. People rushed to help him, pulling his boat to shore. Daniel stepped out of the boat, weak and shaking, but safe. The villagers gave him food, water, and a place to rest. They listened to his story with wide eyes. The next day, a fisherman from the village offered to guide him back to his home by following a safer path along the river. Daniel returned home many days later. His family cried when they saw him. He told them everything, from the storm to the waterfall to the village that saved him. From that day on, Daniel respected the river even more. He knew its beauty, its danger, and its power. And he knew that surviving it had changed him forever.